About a year ago, I went fishing by the river with two friends. We were on a small boat, and Ah-Chang, who was steering, suddenly asked, "Do you guys know what's under this water? They say there are a lot of crocodiles in here. If you don't want them to catch your scent, you'd better be careful." When we reached the fishing spot, we cast our rods into the water and were waiting for the fish to bite. Suddenly, for some unknown reason, Ah-Chang sped up abruptly. With the boat shaking violently, Xiaofu fell into the water. The problem was, he couldn't swim. He thrashed around in the water, screaming at the top of his lungs. Ah-Chang hurriedly steered the boat over to save him, but ended up hitting Xiaofu on the head with the boat. Xiaofu struggled a few more times in the water, then stopped moving and sank. I shouted at Ah-Chang, telling him to save him. He immediately jumped into the water and dove down, but soon resurfaced, yelling, "I can't find him, the water's too deep." I was stunned. Xiaofu had just disappeared like that. Helpless, I shouted loudly at the water's surface. Ah-Chang climbed back onto the boat and said he must have sunk to the bottom. We searched the river, but the surface was as calm as a mirror, as if nothing had ever happened. I was filled with panic, but there was nothing I could do. We immediately called for a rescue team, but whether it was because the water was deep and fast-flowing, they just couldn't find Xiaofu's body. After returning home, I kept replaying the scene in my mind, and the more I thought about it, the more it seemed like Ah-Chang had deliberately pushed Xiaofu into the water. But why would he want to kill Xiaofu? We were all good buddies. Thinking of this, I started to tremble all over. Although Ah-Chang kept explaining to the police that it was an accident, he was still sentenced to 2 years. After that, I decided to cut ties with him. But 2 years later, Ah-Chang called me, "Bro, I'm out, let's go fishing." Just like that, we started occasionally going fishing together again. But every time he invited me, it was always to some remote, deserted place. And he would often say things like, "Look at these godforsaken places. If someone died here, probably no one would ever find out, right?" I became more and more convinced that there was really something off about him. There was another time when he said he wanted to dig a deep pit, fill it with water, put in hundreds of piranhas, and then push someone in to see what would happen. When he said this, his eyes lit up like a child showing off a new toy. He also said that if you want to make big money, you have to do things others don't dare to do, and he seriously tried to persuade me to join him. I felt that he might have some mental issues, and if I kept hanging out with him, I would get into big trouble. So I decided to stop contacting him. Just like that, I didn't have any contact with him for at least 10 years. Until one day he called me again and said he had cancer and wanted to see me before he died. For some reason, I felt a bit sorry for him, so I went to the hospital. He was lying in the hospital bed, so thin he looked like a skeleton. When he saw me, he looked nostalgic and said, "Brother, we used to have such good times together. You probably don't know this, but I killed Xiaofu on purpose because he made me miss out on a big catch. To tell you the truth, I've already killed 5 people. Did you think all those things I told you before were just made up? But now it's all too late. I'm about to die, but I have one last wish. Can you help me fulfill it before I die?" I was so shocked I couldn't speak, not knowing whether I should agree or not. Without waiting for my reply, he continued in a weak voice. "Help me steal a scalpel. I want to cut open the belly of the doctor who operated on me, because he cut open my belly too. I want to know, if his belly were cut open, how would he react?" I didn't say anything, and ran out of the room. Not long after, I heard that he died in his hospital bed. I didn't attend his funeral. Can he rest in peace after death? Will he be able to see Xiaofu? I'm assisting the police with a diving recovery operation in a lake, tasked with retrieving the body of a foolish young man. He fell overboard during a yacht party after drinking, without wearing a life jacket. The lake is very deep, so we have to use mixed gas diving, otherwise we'd risk nitrogen narcosis. I followed all the protocols throughout, stayed in contact with my partner, and kept a close eye on my dive computer at all times. Getting to the bottom isn't hard, but coming back up takes much longer because the visibility is so poor. My partner and I split up to search so we could cover a larger area. After about 5 minutes, I spotted a dark shape on the lakebed that looked like a person. When I swam closer, I saw that the body was still intact, with no signs of decomposition at all. The lower legs were buried in the silt, and it looked as if the person had just died not long ago. I tied a rope to him and got ready to swim upward. Because we were diving so deep, the signal was very weak. I had to swim up a bit before I could send a signal to the salvage boat so they could pull the body up. As I swam, I let out the rope tied to the body behind me, so I would have enough space to ascend. When I reached the first safety stop, I was waiting for my body to decompress further, when I suddenly noticed that the rope was still being let out, even though I had already stopped. The rope was pulled taut and was unwinding rapidly. I immediately realized that the rope was about to run out, and if it kept unwinding at this speed, I would soon be dragged down. But how could that be possible? My rope is at least 300 meters long. How could the lake possibly be that deep? My first reaction was that someone was pulling the rope from below, and they were doing it so fast that I couldn't even hold on. Just grabbing it felt like it was going to cut into my hand. Instinctively, I wanted to grab the rope and cut it with my knife, but then I suddenly came to my senses and realized how foolish that was. Couldn't I just cut the reel attached to my diving suit directly? A few seconds later, the rope was completely gone, disappearing into the murky water. I even felt that if I hadn't cut the strap, the force of that pull alone would have been enough to tear me apart and kill me. I was absolutely terrified at that moment, even more scared than when I found the corpse. But I still slowly swam up, even though my hand hurt like hell and the blood kept flowing. Luckily, this was a freshwater lake, otherwise I really would have been in trouble. Everyone said what I saw was just a hallucination caused by nitrogen narcosis. When divers experience nitrogen narcosis, they can see all sorts of crazy things. Just from what I've heard, some people claimed they saw squids with human faces, and others said they saw the tentacled captain from Pirates of the Caribbean. But narcosis really can have that effect. It can make you see all kinds of bizarre things. But what I just can't figure out is where the wound on my hand came from. The cut was rough and scattered, nothing like the clean lines you'd get from a knife or a scrape against a reef. So what exactly made that cut? What keeps me up at night the most is that I keep suspecting either it was something lurking at the bottom of the lake causing trouble, or some kind of incredibly powerful, terrifyingly fast water monster grabbed the rope and started pulling me back like a fish. I don't even know which possibility is scarier. I'm a community police officer. There's an abandoned building on the hill behind our village. Recently, 4 young people who went there to explore have gone missing. I also heard from an old colleague that several people had disappeared there before, but no clues or evidence were ever found. Even so, I decided to go take a look and investigate the case. The building looked eerie at first glance, and there was a small temple next to it. I ran into a monk there and asked him about the abandoned building. The monk said there was a demon living inside and warned me not to go near it. I couldn't help but chuckle when I heard that, thinking to myself that I don't believe in any of that. But the monk said with a serious face, "Don't take it lightly. Whatever you do, don't go in. If you absolutely must, remember this. No matter what you hear, run immediately, because once the demon speaks, it means the gates of hell have opened." I casually replied with an "okay," and then, full of righteous confidence, walked into the building. I wandered around the building slowly with my flashlight, when suddenly I saw 2 eyes shining in the darkness. I shone my flashlight over and saw someone crawling on the ground like a snake. He stared at me with wide eyes, watching curiously, muttering something under his breath that I couldn't make out. I drew my gun and warned him, loudly asking who he was, but he just kept mumbling and couldn't say a complete sentence. Then he ran off. I chased after him, but suddenly, everything went pitch black. I only heard a particularly loud voice say, "Master said, there's fresh food delivered to the door." He was very pleased. As soon as I heard that, I thought, could this fresh food be referring to me? I immediately broke out in goosebumps. Just then, the monk's voice echoed in my mind, "Get out of there, quickly! You're heading straight for the gates of hell." But it was so dark in front of me I couldn't see a thing. Then, the sound of monks chanting sutras came from all around, and my vision was suddenly restored. But I felt like I was no longer in that building. Instead, I was in a place surrounded by red blood vessels, with waves of heat rolling over me as if I had fallen into a pit of fire. There was a large hole in the floor, and inside it looked like the intestines of a giant monster, constantly writhing. Countless hands reached out from within, grabbing and pulling at me. I struggled desperately, but those hands were too strong. I was slowly sliding into the hole, completely out of my own control. It felt like I was going down a slide, and I was about to be sucked into the hole entirely. I screamed for help at the top of my lungs. Just then, I heard the front door bang open. The monk's voice rang out, his chanting echoing throughout the building. Then I heard a piercing scream, and all the hands grabbing me vanished. Next, the scent of lotus flowers filled the entire building. The heat wave subsided, and the large hole in the floor began to shrink. I crawled out of the hole, and both the blood vessels and the hole disappeared. Exhausted, I fainted. When I woke up, I found myself lying in the temple. The monk was chanting sutras beside me. He told me that I had almost lost my life and warned me never to go there again, reminding me to always have reverence in my heart. After thanking him for saving my life, I left in a daze. Since then, I have never gone near that building again, and I finally understood where all those missing people had gone. This was my unforgettable night. Of course, this unforgettable isn't a good thing. 3 years ago, I ran into a woman at a nightclub. The moment I walked in, I spotted her. Her gaze swept through the crowd of men like she was picking out merchandise. I avoided her eyes a bit self-consciously. After all, I know what I look like. But to my surprise, she walked straight over and started talking to me. "I'm really curious about your voice." I was taken aback. I'd never heard a pickup line like that before, but I started chatting with her anyway. But she didn't look at my face at all. She just kept staring at my mouth. I did my best to show off my sense of humor. Awkward and clumsy, even I felt embarrassed, but she seemed to really appreciate it, and even invited me to her place. Even now I can hardly believe it. How did I get so lucky? As soon as we got to her place, she suddenly pulled out a rope. My heart skipped a beat, and my mind started to wander. Are we really going to play that wild? So as not to ruin the mood, I didn't ask any more questions. I tried to lean in and kiss her, but she pried my mouth open with her hand and said, "Don't rush, this mouth needs to do some talking first." I was even more confused, but I still smiled and said, Right, let's chat first, get to know each other a bit." She suddenly pulled a sharp knife out of the drawer and said, "Good boy, I want to hear you say some sweet things to me. Come on, praise me, use the most beautiful words you can think of to compliment me, and I'll give you a score." She waved the knife in front of my mouth, as if to say that if my compliments weren't good enough, she'd punish me with the knife. Cold sweat broke out on my back. I couldn't tell if she was serious or just joking, and I had no idea what she really wanted. All I could do was force an awkward smile and say, "Really? Then let me warm up my mouth first." I deliberately moved my mouth around, trying to lighten the mood, but she said seriously, I really want to know if I've caught a tasty little fish today. So far I've only heard compliments, but I haven't tasted anything yet. I stared wide-eyed at the knife in her hand and finally understood what was going on. What she wanted were my lips, specifically, lips that could only speak sweet words. If I made a single wrong move, I might end up bleeding on the spot. Sweat was pouring down my face, my mind was a complete mess, and I desperately tried to think of compliments. I never imagined I'd experience such an exciting night. It's my first time meeting a girl as dreamy as you. My heart is about to stop. Tonight I'm going to make your ears overflow with sweetness. She closed her eyes, smiling in pure enjoyment as she listened to my praise. Seizing the right moment, I slapped the knife out of her hand and gave her a hard slap across the face. She screamed and fell to the ground, and I followed up with a few more punches. Only when she stopped resisting did I take off running. As soon as I got out of her house, I called the police. When the police arrived and searched the place, they discovered faint groans from other people inside the house. They found 3 men tied up in the house, but none of them could speak. They just kept crying, and their tongues were covered in knife marks. The investigation revealed that she often seduced men at nightclubs, brought them home, forced them to say sweet words, and then used a knife to score their tongues. When the police arrested her, she even asked the officers, and later the judge, to praise her. Ever since I encountered that woman, I've been left with psychological trauma. After that, whenever I met a woman, I couldn't open my mouth. Maybe after she's released from prison, she'll look for new prey. She's like a little girl, constantly searching for toys to amuse herself, except her toys are living people.